Hey everybody, my name's Adam, or Epos, and this is going to be a very weird progress log, build log, change log video thing. In case you haven't been following me on social media, and if that's the case, go ahead and do so. Links will be in the description below for Twitter, Facebook, and that jazz. Been having a lot of cooling troubles, again, with my main editing and gaming rig. And to show you a quick example here, minimize everything else, pull up, I use CPU ID hardware monitor for my temps. If you know a better program, let me know, but this is the only one I've gotten to give me accurate ones. Sitting at idle with the side panel open, I get about 60 degrees here, and if I keep my fan on, it bounces between 40 and 50 degrees on the actual CPU temperature, and 55 to 70 on the socket. And this is literally doing nothing. I have Chrome open, but it's not doing anything. Like, nothing is happening on the computer right now. Now, when I render a video, it goes up into the 80s and then eventually overheats, unless I keep the side panel open, in which case it'll stay in the 70s to low 80 range and just not overheat because it's pulling fresh air in directly across the radiator. Now, my setup for this is a Corsair H100i. Let me slide that open there. Yeah, Corsair H100i all-in-one water cooler. This was what I was originally told was the only thing that could cool this processor. I am running with an AMD FX 9590, which is essentially one of the hottest running processors there is, but it's 8 cores at 5 gigahertz, so I can't exactly complain. Now, the current setup I've recently added a second fan on the side here to take air out from the graphics card and power supply area. And then I have an exhaust on the back, and then this is actually exhausting across the radiator from inside the case. This was recommended to me, well, not to me, but in a video by Linus, who said that's the easiest way to make sure that air is constantly being pulled across the radiator at a good speed, and then it's easy to dust off because you can just wipe off the radiator. Well, the fans, I don't know if they're super loud in this, they're actually running at max speed. I had to take off all of the little low noise adapters, and I'm running them at a full 1500 RPM, and I'm still having these overheating issues. And to me, that should not be happening. And then, for those wondering, I also have 240mm fans in the front going in the case. This should not be happening. That's just way too hot. But what I'm pretty sure is happening is the initial burst and the initial heat up from rendering is too much for the cooler to effectively cool, and then it can never catch up, and then it just stays way too hot and overheats and crashes. And that's a problem with these all-in-one water coolers, is when you have the pump on top of the processor, no heatsink of any kind, and then the in and out tubes right next to each other constantly conducting with each other, you have no real way to cool the processor if the initial, heat up is too much. And so, if it can't disperse the first amount of heat, the entire loop is completely heated up, and there's nowhere for that heat to go. And that little lit up pump on top of the processor is actually creating heat itself, because it's a motor running on top of the processor, which is why in custom loops you have a separate pump and reservoir that go inside your case in separate parts. So as a solution, which I'm hoping will work this time, is I purchased the Noctua NH-D15, and as you can tell here, this is one ginormous cooler box. So I'm going to open it up and install it, and what should hopefully happen is obviously the fans are going to do work to keep the processor cool, but no matter what, there is this giant ass heatsink on top of the processor that's always going to keep it cool from, moment zero, so hopefully it's not as big of an issue when it starts rendering. So I'm going to get to the unboxing, just a very quick unboxing and speed up of the install, and we're going to see how we do. I'm going to put my average render temperatures at 80 degrees on the socket and say 75 on the processor with the H100i, and then idle temps of 40 to 50 on the processor and 55 to 65 on the socket. So we'll see what we get after this. Keep in mind I have been running this for quite a few months. During the winter, when I had very freezing cold air in my room, I actually had these as intake going through the radiator with the fans underneath, which ended up working because the air was really cold that was being brought across the radiator. Well, that stopped working when it turned to hot air, and I've not been able to compensate for that cooling difference since. So hopefully this will work. Now, quickly unboxing this behemoth of a cooler. Again, this isn't an actual product feature video, though hopefully it's a testament to this product's capability. I paid for this and just ordered this because I needed a cooling solution fast. This is not a review unit. We have... hello. There we go. We have 2 boxes of Secure Firm 2 trademark mounting systems. We have one for AMD and one for Intel. The one for Intel is like twice as heavy as the AMD one, because the AMD one actually requires you to have a previously installed backplate on your processor, as do pretty much all coolers for AMD for some reason, which is what I'm using, so not a big deal. I'm just going to toss the Intel one aside, set this one out for me to use. And then we have the accessories, which is an Allen key or screwdriver head, thermal compound, although I bought my own, and then a couple brackets and adapters. And then I also ordered my own big O tube of Arctic Silver thermal compound. Very nice soft foam that I love to see in packaging. Fan number 1 is, well, this is actually fan number 2, NF A15 PWM fan. This is the round one. And then underneath we should have the other one, or it should already be installed maybe. Looks like it may already be installed judging by the picture. So that appears to be it in the box, just more soft foam. Drop that down, and then this is the box with the cooler itself. This is slightly, I ordered and used the NHD14, which is this cooler's predecessor. Hello, box. In a previous build. It's actually in Chu's rig at the moment, in my fiance's rig. And this is packaged and set up quite a bit differently, even though it's a very, very similar product. Opening it up, yeah, the other fan is in here. Like I said, this is a behemoth. Although not quite as big as the box may have alluded to, it is still freaking huge. This box is very complex. There we go. Quite the exquisite amount of packaging. I approve. It's even got cardboard spacing in here to keep the fan from bouncing around too much and bending up the heat pipes. That's pretty cool. This is literally just spacing. It's not even important cardboard. Alright, so what we have here is 6 giant heat pipes running across that processor block, which thankfully does not come with pre-applied thermal compound, so I just got to clean off the old stuff off the processor and apply the new stuff. And the 6 heat pipes go up on both sides to these giant heat sinks, which are going to be cooled by 2 fans, which you can attach on both sides of each heat sink with these little brackets and adapters here. It is huge, and it hopefully should be able to handle this processor. And we have the other fan, which I believe will go like over here. So time to strip the other build down and get to work. Woo! Okay, well, I can't do a single computer major repair without getting a migraine from the thermal compound remover stuff, or without busting up my knuckles until that happened. But I swapped out my crappy old water cooler there for the air cooler. And here, I'll unplug this. I keep trying to charge my camera, but I keep unplugging it. So I was able to put the little silent pads back on top here since there's nothing attached to this, which means it's running a lot quieter. I have the fans on their low noise adapters instead of running at max speed. So if we pull over here to hardware monitor, they're running at about 1,000 RPM, and the socket is at 47 degrees, and the processor's at 30 something, bouncing around to 40s. About the same idle temps, although the socket's running much cooler. But the processor actually sometimes, like I took a little bit of video of it a minute ago, it was dipping down into the mid-20s. So that's a good sign, but I do have to queue up a render of sorts to really test it. So let me open up Media Encoder, and then I really got to get this camera plugged in and take some ibuprofen. My head's killing me. And I guess I'll prop the door open. I don't want to have to keep forcing open the door all the time, because it doesn't even want to stay open because it's not supposed to. But I do have those intake fans in there. And I don't have any renders queued up. Perfect. Let's pull up an old project and just give it a second render, and ooh, a longer one. We'll render out my case review again. Alright, close that out and render. We'll see what happens. I'm not liking how high those are already. Like, that's not actually doing anything yet. But I'm not going to worry about it yet until it renders. Now I have a mess in my floor and thermal grease everywhere. Stop shutting. Prop that back open again. Yeah, while it's doing this, you can't see, but that's back down in the 40s, so that's good. And render starts. It's gonna kick up. I let it do its thing. Processor's up around 65 to 70 already. Socket's staying cooler, which isn't how it normally happens. Usually that one gets really, really hot before that one. So that's interesting. We'll see how it goes. It's got probably about 20 minutes to half an hour to render. That's a good benchmark test, I guess. Burn it in. I don't like to see 70s though. That's not good. 70s is bad, especially on the processor. That's really weird. See, I'm thinking the thermal compound isn't right. That's gonna suck though. It's such a pain in the ass to do with this cooler. And I already had to redo it once just on that install, but I don't know, I always put too much, which I feel, oh, that was an 80s spike, hello. I always put too much, which I'm told makes it way worse. But I don't feel like putting on the thin amounts everyone suggests is enough, but then I can't spread it out properly because the way the cooler attaches. We'll see. I'll just let it run and just not touch it. If it turns off, it turns off. Alright, well I guess it's a good thing I ordered that power supply. I ordered an 850 watt power supply of the one that I have a 750 watt version of, because it just shut down while rendering. The processor said it was on 80C in hardware monitor. My overheat protection is at 100C on the motherboard in Southbridge, and I believe it's at 90C on the processor, although I'm not seeing that anywhere here, but I believe that's what it's supposed to be. When I restarted it, which this has happened before, but this time it didn't. When I restarted it, it did not give me on the BIOS, because I restarted it instantly. In the BIOS menu, it did not give me a CPU temp error. And when I pulled it up, it was still in like the 60s or 70s. So I'm wondering if it's a power thing now. Because it just shut right off. The lights on my keyboard came on, which is usually a power thing, but it's been happening every time it shut off recently. So we'll swap out the power, see what happens. I don't have that yet, so that'll be sometime next week. Alright, so after a good few days at least with the Noctua NHD15 cooler, I'm very impressed with it, and I haven't had any overheating issues like I had with my H100i, but it became very clear that heating was not, or cooling was not the main issue that I was experiencing. I was still getting overheating issues and overheating shutdowns on the previous cooler, but I'm also most of them are actually power issues. And I started to notice that, but I didn't 100% confirm that until this happened, because when it'll cut out for power issues, it'll actually leave my keyboard lights on and things like that, to where it doesn't fully shut down everything properly because it literally just loses power. And that's why I'm not finding any sort of event logs or things like that for most of my shutdowns, because it literally just loses power. It's not telling itself to shut down, it's just suddenly it can't power itself. So to hopefully remedy this, I have picked up which is a huge freaking box, the Corsair RM850, which is a Gold Plus rating, yeah, Gold 80 Plus rating power supply built for silent enthusiasts while still delivering good power. This is actually the same power supply that I went with before, but I went with a 750 watt, so to replace it I got an 850 watt just in case. And hopefully that will fix my issue. I I guess in theory I should have gone with a different brand power supply entirely, just in case there was something faulty about the power supply. But I trust the power supply enough, I just think it may not. I don't know. We're gonna unbox it and put it in and see how it goes. Although Destiny House of Wolves just came out, so I'm gonna be playing that with a couple friends and recording that, so I won't be able to afford the downtime at the moment to replace the power supply just yet. And that is my biggest issue with determining what my actual issue is I can't go through the process of formally testing and confirming whether or not my power supply is my main issue, because that would cost me a lot more downtime than just replacing it. So we're going to replace it and see what happens. Alright, this is the Corsair RM50 silent power supply, 850 watt, ultra quiet power supply, optimized for silence, fully modular. So literally, since I had the 750 watt version of this, I will literally just be able to take out the power supply block itself and swap in the other and just plug all the cables back in without having to do any rewiring, which is going to be the best part here. It does feature a zero RPM mode for when it is idle, which is hugely important for silent builds such as mine. I'm already giving myself cardboard cuts, trying to pull off the flap. There we go. Whoa! Comes in this giant box. I still have the other box downstairs holding cables in because it's so big and handy to have. That finally let me know where that box came from, because I could never figure it out before. Inside the box we have a warranty guide and a quick start guide, safety information, what have you. Unimportant stuff for me, other than maybe if I want to redeem the warranty. We do get a nice amount of cable ties, as well as a case badge and mounting screws. Do not eat. We get actual power cable itself, which is good to come with, of course. And we have a giant bag of the modular cables, which I'm actually just going to put straight into storage because I won't need them for the purposes of swapping out the power supply. And we have some of the best soft foam storage solutions I've ever seen. Super thick, super soft, but gonna keep your items safe. I wish everything shipped with this kind of rugged soft foam. And we have the power supply itself. This thing is massive, 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 massive. Branding on the side, information on the top, branding on the side. Power switch and plug on the bottom. Rip that off, don't need that. And then there's your fan and grill on the bottom there, but it does stay idle it does stay silent and turns off while it's idle. You do of course have Corsair Link if you want to use that. I never really got that working in a way that didn't just cause me more problems, so I'm probably not going to use it. But then all your modular cables, so I'm literally just going to swap the other one out and plug all these back in there. So that'll be pretty sweet. We'll try it out and see what happens. Alright, well, it's been a couple days and I've done some test renders, and as far as I can tell, my computer is now stable-ish. I still had an issue where my audio interface kept disconnecting in a certain USB port, so I moved it to a totally different hub on the back of the motherboard, and it appears to be fine now. So I had that issue previously when I got it working again, so I don't know why that USB hub is having trouble with it, but it appears to be fine now. I've done a couple test renders, it didn't overheat, it stayed really cool, and it hasn't shut down yet. So if anything too crazy happens, I'll do a separate update video, but that's it for this update repair log. So if your computer's shutting down and just completely losing power and not giving you overheat warnings, it's probably the power supply, even if you are having overheat warnings. So just kind of got to weigh your options like I did, and it was safer for me to replace both the power supply and the cooler, because that way I then got an upgraded power supply, which seems to have been the problem, and I upgraded the cooler, which was still giving me separate problems that seem similar to the problem. So it was still important, but just wanted to update you guys. Hopefully videos can return to normal. Thank you for watching. See you next time. My name has been Adam or Epos Box. Let me know if you never want to see this again.